Hello and welcome to another edition of TMO.live. I'm the Media Online's multimedia journalist, Michael Bratt. The Radio Days Africa Conference is coming up, taking place from the 5th to the 7th of July at the University of the Witwatersrand. At this gathering, experts will explore the latest happenings and trends in radio. To tell me more, I'm joined by Franz Kruger, Adjunct Professor of Journalism and Director of the Radio Academy at Wits University. Thanks for being here.
Hi, great to be here.
We'll start off with a brief history of Radio Days.
Well, this is the 8th edition. I mean, we were talking about it this morning. It's extraordinary that it's been around for that length of time. We first did it in 2009 together with a German group called Deutsche Welle, who had an interest in creating something of that kind. We missed 2010. They were unable to get involved. And then from 2011 onwards, we did it on our own. And ever since then, it's been an annual event. It takes place in July. Usually 2.5 days, as it is this year, and it's had the same sort of format. The name changed about 2 years ago. It was Joburg Radio Days initially for several years, and then we felt that we wanted to show that we were really interested in the whole continent, and we renamed it Radio Days Africa. There's been some rebranding last year, but it's really grown and grown. I mean, at the beginning, I remember we met in a small room in a little building on the edge of its campus. So now we're getting over 300 to 400 people through the door every year. So it's really become a major event on our calendar, and we think on the calendar of radio people across the continent.
Let's talk about the program for this year's event, the themes that are going to be explored.
So this year we've chosen the theme #FutureTuned, and we're really trying to capture the need for radio stations and radio people to remain firmly tuned into the trends of the future. And of course, a lot of that is about technology. It's about new platforms, it's about social media, it's about the opportunities that are opening up for media people generally, and particularly for radio people. And what we're finding, of course, is that there are very specific opportunities that open up for radio, challenges, of course, to some extent, but also real opportunities. So we're spending time on new media. We're spending a chunk of time on podcasting, which is almost a new medium of its own. And we've got some very interesting speakers talking to us about that. And we're actually hosting a meeting of people interested in podcasts on the tail end of the second day of the conference. We're also really interested in public broadcasting. So, given the extent to which the SABC here has been in the news, that's an ongoing issue that we'll be exploring. We have a panel on public broadcasting, and we have a very interesting case study from Ghana, which actually has a very successful public broadcaster that we're keen to hear from. And then we have a range of edgy, experimental projects that we think are interesting. Hospital radio from Cape Town. We have somebody talking about a couple of radio stations from Burundi that were driven into exile and who are continuing to broadcast on WhatsApp. So they're creating daily news content and putting that out as an audio file on WhatsApp and reaching in one case 300,000 listeners, and in another an audience of about 400,000 listeners, which are really big audiences. So it's in that cluster of different areas that we're looking.
Certainly a wide range of topics. Who are going to be some of the keynote speakers who are going to be talking about these topics?
Well, I mean, perhaps the biggest name that we have this time is Valerie Geller, who is a very well-known American radio coach and teacher. She's written a series of books. She's incredibly well-known across the world, and we're very fortunate that she'll be here in person this time for the first time. We had her once on a fairly dodgy Skype connection. This time she's actually in Johannesburg, and she'll be giving her inputs. We're expecting the chair of the interim SABC board, Kanisile Koyama. We're expecting a really exciting panel. We'll be talking about the radio streaming services that we're seeing. So we have Gareth Cliff and Thibaut Touch and Sbu, who in their different ways have really opened up the online radio space in South Africa. So those are some of the sort of really big names that we're expecting.
Hard-hitting speakers and a wide range of topics. What is happening in radio at the moment? Some of the general trends that we are seeing?
Well, again, I suppose it comes back to the topics that we'll be touching on, at the conference. I mean, I think everybody is grappling with, the technological possibilities. The online streaming radio has become a big thing. As I say, although we will have a speaker who will be pouring some cold water on that and saying, actually, the streaming services are not really getting the kind of audiences that they're getting. Of course, there's a lot of interest in audience measurement. The new system of the Broadcast Research Council is relatively new. We've had, for about a year now, we've had results from the new arrangements, and that's still bedding down, but we feel the need to come back to that. Public broadcasting is a big theme. For African radio people, we also have to take on board the fact that there are very particular dynamics around African radio. So, for instance, we have a set of diasporic broadcasters. So these are radio stations that are driven into exile and are broadcasting from there. We have some very new landscapes. We have an overview of the developing landscape in a country like Uganda, where there is a large number of independent, small independent stations. So we have about 64 speakers, and we are touching on a lot of these topics, with a particular interest with, one of the big things is new media, the way in which new media impacts on radio stations, the way in which radio stations need to adapt to places where audiences are going.
Is the conference open to anybody to attend?
Sure. Anybody can go online onto our website, www.journalism.co.za, and you'll find an application form, and you're very welcome to attend. It will be full, so it would be a good idea to do that fairly quickly. You can also, if you can't find us there, if you Google Radio Days Africa, you'll certainly find the links to give you the forms and the details and so on.
And finally, a bit of a punt from you, and in summary, why should people attend Radio Days Africa?
Well, for anybody who's interested in radio. And actually, we need to remember that over 90% of South Africa's population, and in other African countries, the percentages can be even higher. Everybody is interested in some ways in radio. I mean, we find that young people say to us, well, we don't really listen to radio. But then you ask them, do you listen to the morning show on, whatever it is, Kaya or Jacaranda or whatever? And they say, yeah, we do listen. It's so built into people's everyday lives that they're hardly conscious of it. So for anybody who's interested in radio, it is really the place to be. It's the place to connect with international speakers, with international trends. We have 19 international speakers. And absolutely the top South African speakers will be there. It's a place to meet people. It's a place to hear great ideas. It's a place to network. And it's a place to have some great fun.
We'll certainly be keeping an eye out for what's coming out of this conference. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you very much, Michael. It's been great to be here.
That was Franz Kruger. He's Adjunct Professor of Journalism and Director of the Radio Academy at Wits University. And that's it for this week's TMO Live. Until next week, it's goodbye from me.